Welcome to the Peak News. I'm Digital Pastor Jim Pierce, pastor of Springs of Living Water Church here, and I'm guest hosting for I'm Goldman, the Watchman. And you're listening to AM 1460, FM 101, The Answer. We are also live streaming on Facebook, the Peak News Media, and YouTube at the Peak News. And also, I am also live streaming on our church's YouTube channel and also on our Facebook channel. So my name is Pastor Jim Pierce. I pastor Springs of Living Water Church here in Colorado Springs. The Peak. We say the quiet stuff out loud. I love that tagline. The Peak News is truth-telling and First Amendment defending broadcast and internet news source for citizens of the Pikes Peak region. Anyway, we invite you to join us as a citizen journalist, tech, intern, guest, and or sponsor. All on the info is on their website, www.thepeaknews.news. Let me say that again, www.thepeak.news. Brought to you by Springs Dentist and Dr. Craig Summer, Holistic Dentistry in Colorado Springs. Our show today, we're going to interview Pastor Gerrod Groubert. I always say your name wrong, Gerrod.
Groubert.
Groubert, sorry. And Pastor Gerrod and I met several months ago, actually at Chaim's house, if I remember correctly. And we got a great talk. Gerrod has impacted my life, him and his wife Summer, just amazing people. Gerrod is a licensed and ordained pastor, Bachelor of Ministries through Wagner Leadership Institute, which is very impressive for me. Bachelor of Psychology from UCCS. His professional background includes children's ministries, counseling, case management, life skills coach, and working in the field of medicine and rehab. And you and Summer have been married for 15 years, right?
Yes.
And you have 4 beautiful children.
Mm-hmm.
They're awesome. I love your kids. They're super intelligent. And so today we're going to be just talking about lots of different topics. Let's see. So I want to welcome you to the Peak News, and we're going to just have a fun time chatting it up here today. Today's program will be featuring local headlines, and we'll be discussing. Really, I want to focus on family issues. You know, you've done children's ministries. I've done children's ministries many years ago when my kids were coming up. We didn't have the internet.
Yes.
We didn't have smartphones. It was a little tiny. We had the big brick phone, and so you're facing stuff that I never had to face raising my children. And so we're going to kind of talk about just all these different, the different things that that you're facing raising, and you homeschool all 4 of your children, right?
Yes, we do.
That's awesome. And so, so I just want to thank all of our sponsors and encourage our listeners to patronize the sponsors of the program. Let's see, I'm a little bit confused. I haven't done this on this side of the desk before. I'm used to having Chaim ask me questions and I just get to answer. So, okay. So what's on your heart today, Gerrod? What strikes you as important issues in families today?
Well, one of the things that has been a little bit concerning for us is the concept of coaching and or counseling in the schools.
Hmm.
And so with that being said, there have been times in the news where they've been stating that you really can't speak out against things like the gay, lesbian, transgender movement without potentially having your license at risk. And that's a really hard place to be because if there is not that freedom of speech,
Hmm.
it's very difficult. But the interesting piece specifically goes into the coaching aspect.
Right.
And so a lot of times with a lot of the nonprofits, what's been transpiring is the nonprofit world has been hurting a little bit
Hmm.
because they're being held to a standard of not being able to reach out and speak about topics that they're concerned about. Let's say someone is dealing with where they want to go for their gender, for example.
Right. Right.
That could be misconstrued and portrayed inappropriately um, if you're in a counseling mindset and a counseling conversation.
Hmm.
And the reason for that is that the counselor has to uphold boundaries and not lead one way or the other. But that can be seen differently.
Right.
And so it's just interesting that there's that concern there.
Hmm.
Um, and it's intriguing how that should be approached.
Right, right. Yeah, my next door neighbor is the president of a local charter school. And so he's shared with me some of the challenges he faces. Most of their students are believers, but there's lots of challenges they face in trying to keep things going. So just want to thank you for joining us. We're going to be back in a few minutes and keep listening. I have no idea what I'm doing.
So then we've got to grab another. Are you still live on this one?
Am I what? Yes. Yeah, that's fine though. Yeah, it's kind of nice background stuff. But
Okay.
so yeah, we'll do another. What does dirty laundry mean? We'll be right back. Okay, so welcome back to Peak News. Thank you for joining us in our weekly theme of faith and family. All right. So this is our 10-minute segment, right? And
Okay.
give me some guidance.
Okay. So yeah. Oh, I apologize about that thing before when you guys started to talk. It was messed up from we did a pre-record last week and it wasn't switched back out. And then right here you didn't hear the music at the end because I wasn't sure if it was fixed yet. I didn't want to turn it up yet.
Oh, okay.
That's why you didn't have it.
That's
going,
fine.
But that was still the amount of time.
We're good.
Good job getting out.
Okay.
So, do you have your headlines? You found your headlines.
No, we didn't. It was all weird stuff that didn't relate to family stuff.
Okay. Let's see.
So, but I think what would be an easy one. So we're supposed to talk about local news, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Gerrod homeschools his kids, and that kind of plays right into local listener interest, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
So you mean talking about homeschooling your kids? What are you talking about?
Just bringing up the issues of what is it like to homeschool kids in today's world?
Mm-hmm.
What challenges are you facing? I didn't have to face those with my kids when they were little, but
You can do that if you want, and I'm guessing you weren't going to do that in another spot.
No.
Okay. As long as you aren't taking from something else.
Right, right.
That's okay if you can. It would be better to do headlines, but if you think this is a good topic, yeah, that is just you have more content for the show.
Right,
You
right.
have more.
Okay. And so we have 10 minutes in this segment, right?
Yep.
And then after this segment is a 5-minute segment, and that's where he's going to go through his talking points.
Right.
Okay. So when I come back,
10-minute, including the bumpers, so it's 30 seconds.
okay, for bumpers on both ends. So welcome back to the Peak. Thank you for joining us, Faith and Family. I'm Pastor Jim, Springs Living Water, guest hosting for The Watchman. I am Goldman. Okay. And
Guest is this.
and our guest is Gerrod Groubert. I keep saying your name wrong. I don't know why.
Groubert.
Groubert.
Just
Sorry.
without the T.
Gerrod Groubert. I don't mean to be disrespectful.
It's okay. If you say Groubert, then it won't be a
Yeah, Pastor Gerrod Groubert. And so we're going to talk about homeschooling. What have you learned? What have you experienced? What's on your heart?
In this segment, talking about this. Are you going to go back and forth or just give him just talking time?
I'll just give him talking time and then throw questions at him.
Okay. Now, he already will have a monologue the next segment. So
Right.
I'm not trying to balance it.
Okay.
You guys also, if you want to say what you think of it. Here's what I think about homeschooling. We can talk about I don't know if you did your kids or whatever. But,
Yeah, part of it, their
yeah,
education.
You
Yeah.
can give some of yours, you can give some of his. That'll be fine.
Okay. All right.
Especially if there's no specific. Now, also, if there's any national news you can think of that has to do with it, what is Trump doing with? I don't know.
Yeah, Trump's crazy. I don't know what he's doing.
Right,
I love him, but he's crazy.
we got about 20 seconds.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so I'll give you that point. Do you guys know hand signals? So obviously, like for you, I can give you a 3, 2, and a 1.
Right, right.
This is 30 seconds, so you can also use that for you.
Okay, 30 seconds.
30 seconds, and then this is like get out, like 15 seconds, 10 seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, welcome back. Coming to you live, the Peak News. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be discussing faith, family, homeschooling. I'm Pastor Jim. I'm senior pastor of Springs of Living Water Church here in Colorado Springs. Guest hosting for Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. I like doing it that weird way. Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. I love Chaim. He's so awesome. Okay, have Pastor Gerrod Groubert here with me helping out, and we're going to be, he homeschools his kids, and you guys have been doing this for several years. Now, when my kids were little, we homeschooled them part-time for part of their education. Public schools weren't quite as maybe dicey as they are today. So I just want to kind of just talk about what have you experienced? Have you homeschooled them from the very beginning? Were they in public school at any point or charter school?
So we ended up taking our kids out of the charter schools
Okay.
right around the time frame of COVID. And part of the reason for that was that the the schools were going to, everything has to be online,
Mm-hmm.
and they were also decreasing the amount of school days because there were so many outbreaks of COVID.
Right.
And so with that, it's really interesting because we started to see in our own kids concerns about things like reading and
Mm-hmm.
things like being able to keep up with the statistics of being able to have proper performance.
Right.
And so, for example, one of the interesting pieces that we've been dealing with is that the NAEP assessment is at 31% of fourth graders performing at or above the NAEP proficiency level.
Mm-hmm.
That basically means very few fourth graders are learning to properly read.
Wow.
And so we have a big issue with that because and some of it with the COVID time frame
Right.
dealt with the masks. You couldn't see a person's face moving. You couldn't
Mm-hmm.
be able to catch the facial cues that
Right.
were going on for reading, which
Right.
is not as bad if you're talking about high schoolers who already know how. But
Right.
with those younger grades, it was very difficult.
Right.
And so we decided to pull our youth out of the schooling experience there and shift that into the homeschooling concept.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And your children were what, first, second grade when the whole COVID outbreak began?
Yes, yeah, they were. And I have 4 kids, 11, 9, 6, and 5. And the interesting piece about that is with the wide range of skill levels, we had to be able to maneuver the ability to teach them all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that stems from being able to have proper curriculum, be able to
Right.
really establish good core values of teaching,
Right.
but also being present.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the big things that we realized very quickly with stepping into the homeschooling arena is that
Right.
being present with your kids is extremely powerful for your family.
Hmm. Now, with my children, they were in public school in their early years. In their 5th and 6th grade, we homeschooled them. My experience is I had a hard time homeschooling my kids. I
Yes.
was a children's pastor for many years. Working with kids is easy for me, but educating my own children was very difficult for me. And then one of the things I've learned about knowing you for these past several months, we've met and got to spend time together. You and your wife do tons of research. You leave no stone unturned. And I'm sure you've researched the curriculum, education styles. I mean, you guys are thorough.
Yes. And we want to make sure that our youth are at a high standard, and that's part of the process. And so we actually have gone through a Christian cottage school umbrella, and the awesome piece about that is that they establish a lot of the curriculum and do testing so that you know where your kids are,
Right.
which is an important piece of homeschooling. Some people don't utilize that; they use other types of learning, but that can be a very valuable and beneficial piece to the homeschooling process.
I see. Do they do the testing online or in a classroom setting or?
It's in a classroom setting, and
Okay.
it's individualized for each youth. And so everything is different. They can score low in math, they can score high in reading,
Mhm.
and it benefits both the strengths and the weaknesses of the youth.
Right. And of course, this is in the public headlines with President Trump wanting to defund the national, what is it called again? The national education thing and return control of education to the states,
Yes.
which to me, obviously, that program has failed for the past 30 or 40 years. and the quality of education is precipitously dropped across the board,
Yes.
except for, I mean, when a school is looking for students to give scholarships, the first students they look for are homeschool students,
Right.
then charter school and private school students, then public school students.
And one of the blessings of that is statistically, because there is that one-on-one interaction with the children,
Hmm.
the statistics actually raises dramatically,
Right.
and it really does change the outcome. And so, looking at the homeschooling portion, that's part of why they were also looking at establishing more funding for homeschoolers.
Right. So there'd be federal funds maybe available that you could apply for as a homeschooler,
Yes.
and then of course you have to meet certain criteria and benchmarks as far as what they learn and how they're tested.
Hmm.
But that's going to be a piece of cake because your personal standards are far above the national minimum requirements, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And the blessing is that you can see your kids where they're at. And so, for example, when with COVID, when they were pulled out, it really established this issue of online learning and the lack
Hmm.
of the presence of the teacher and the class size being too many people to handle.
Right.
Now, that might not necessarily have changed much, but in the public school, they're trying to still have the larger groups, larger classes, and some of that one-on-one mentorship is just a game changer.
Right. Right.
And I was constantly having my daughter come home, and we'd have to reteach the math or
Mm.
reteach the reading that she was supposed to be learning in school,
Right.
and she wasn't getting those concepts there.
Right.
And that was in a charter school. You would have thought that that wouldn't be the case.
Right, right. I gotcha. I gotcha. And having spent some time talking with your children personally, I've administered and met thousands of children throughout my life. I worked at summer camps. I pastored a children's pastor at a church in Grand Junction for several years. We had 800 kids in our program. So I've been around a lot of kids
Hmm.
from all different backgrounds and experience levels. One of the things I appreciate, if I could brag on you for a second, one of the things I appreciate about talking to your kids is I can talk to them at virtually an adult level. Their verbal skills are extreme. Their knowledge of the content we're discussing is usually almost equal to an adult in some areas. They're beautiful, and and they're well behaved, and they always have a very deep question to ask. So you guys done a great job.
I appreciate that. And that one of the interesting pieces of that is we really believe that it's very important for us to maintain innocence,
Mm,
but not to have ignorance.
right.
And so one of the blessings of being in that homeschool setting is we can sit down and we can go over math or we can go over reading, and then we can take that into the broader picture of life, and we can incorporate that into the things that they need to learn holistically. And so that makes them more mature, because
Mm,
with that maturity comes the wisdom
right.
of the Lord.
Right, right. And you spend a lot of time teaching them spiritual guidelines too. This isn't
Yes.
just, you guys are a very deep spiritual family from my
Yes.
observation.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. That's beautiful. You've got their hearts and their minds.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Yeah. And it's a blessing. I've had that foundation from my parents. And so we are actually a second generation family.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a similar program. My dad was actually a principal
Hmm.
for a very small school.
Mm-hmm.
But those concepts that were upheld there, we try to uphold in our home.
Beautiful. Well, it seems it's very effective, obviously. And I think that the passion that you guys show for what you do is expressed in your family and interactions. I appreciate it.
And I hope that people out there choose to do so, because it actually is a very powerful tool.
Yeah, it's powerful. So I'm Pastor Jim, Springs Living Water Church, interviewing Pastor Gerrod Groubert, and you're listening to The Peak on AM 1460, FM 101.1, The Answer. We'll be right back with our guest, Pastor Gerrod Groubert. That was a little smoother.
Do we have one more?
Yes, we got another 5-minute segment. This is where we can do your monologue.
Okay.
Is that right? Can you hear me, Zach? We'll do the monologue next with Gerrod. Okay.
Was that, and so that was both of them together? Ask him if we have one more.
Oh, how many more segments? We have one more segment or two? We got the 5-minute segment left. There's 5 minutes, and there's a 12-minute interview.
It's an hour show. Goes till 4.
Oh, okay. So we got plenty of time to go over
so
his
next
points.
one you monologue, then you've got your interview segment where he specifically interviewing you. You're going to talk about one of the questions is background, bring us up till now. Then he'll ask you, hey, what do you think is the main issue? Something you haven't talked about yet.
Sure.
But more launching into the topic, talking about your expertise, but also creating good content for the show.
Right,
I think it says here, let's see, interview. Okay, so background authority, and then you're going to want to introduce. Question 2 is going to be problem, context, and then question 3, solution, because you introduce a problem, solution, and then 4 is promotion. You're going to want to be, hey, how can we find more about you, or you're going to have a chance to promote yourself.
Okay.
And so that's the long segment. That's a 12-minute segment.
Okay. So that's probably the. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
And then you've got one more 5-minute segment going into a gym rant. So you know about the gym rants, right?
No.
Okay, cool. So Jim Miller, just a guy, I don't know if you've heard of him. He has this rant 2.5 minutes. So that's how long it is. 2.5 minutes.
Is that pre-recorded?
Yeah, pre-recorded.
Okay.
So you're gonna say, hey, this is Jim Miller, and let's see, and now Big Guns with Just Guy Jim Miller and his take on, and I'm actually switching out the rant, but anyway, and then so you go to me, and then I hit go,
And then he'll hit the rant.
Do you have another copy of the outline?
Yeah, I'll go get you one.
Okay, sorry about that.
I have one. And so then.
So basically, it's 4-minute, 10-minute, or 4-minute, 14-minute.
Well, 12-minute segment, but kind of 10 minutes mainly because you got an intro and outro.
Okay.
And you've got another 4 minutes of gym rant, and then you've got a 2-minute outro where he'll just be talking. So in that last segment before the gym rant, that 4-minute one, he's gonna want to say, "Hey, thanks for being on the peak."
Okay.
He's gonna want to
Close that out with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're awesome, Gerrod.
You too. I know it's he does a lot of stuff that he has all that lined up. It's very interesting how he does it.
Yeah. And Chaim's just
I know.
it's just in his head,
He's done it so much.
Here's just a blank script. So normally what you would do during the prep time, which you didn't end up, and if you want to during a break,
Sure.
discuss what specific questions is he asking you. But these are just a general kind of format.
Okay.
For your interview segment.
Okay, that's the 12.
Right.
We did the 10. Thank you. Local headlines.
20 seconds.
You're awesome, Zach. Thank you for your help. I know it's kind of a crazy with.
You're doing really great. Are you utilizing the timer, right?
Nope.
You are? Okay. It would help too, probably.
Probably.
If you click reset.
When we start, I have to remember to
how
push.
long you're at.
So I have to do 2 things at once?
Just start it when
I
it
can't
starts.
chew gum and write.
Start it right now. You start it now because that's when the music starts.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Welcome back. My name is Pastor Jim Pierce, Springs Living Water Church. I'm guest hosting for Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. And my guest today is Pastor Gerrod Groubert, and we are discussing raising children in today's world. How do you do that without losing your mind? And so we're going to go into the next segment here. And Gerrod, you've got some interesting material you want to bring to us, right?
I do. So part of what we wanted to touch base on today is a springboard off of something that we taught in the previous ministry experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that stems from the character of Christ.
Okay.
So in the home, it's very important for us as family and parents to be able to give an idea for our kids to actually see a model of what Christ looks like. And so back in the day, we established this, and I'm just going to go through a couple of the topic pieces. So the mnemonic Christ, Christ,
Mm-hmm.
you have care, honor, respect, integrity, self-control, and truth.
Excellent.
And so with those concepts, what we realized was that kids coming into ministry and parents who are stepping into knowing God for the first time, and people who are in leadership, they tend to need something to grab a hold of. And so these concepts are something that holistically can establish a stronger person, whether they're old or they're young. And so what we encourage in our household is for us to live like Christ would. And so I'm going to read in a scripture that is based off of the truth portion of that.
Okay.
And we'll go straight into what we're talking about here.
Excellent.
Ephesians 4:14 and 15. Don't be as children, tossed here and there by the waves of doctrine. Now, hold on a second. I thought we were supposed to be like children, and that's how we got into the kingdom of heaven.
Mm-hmm. Good contrast. Yeah.
Very interesting piece there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The irony here is that when that was said, it actually is talking about the word children in Greek is 3516, which is immature infants or those who are unable to speak. And so there's this concept of being a person who, if you have someone that is beneath you, you should be able to speak truth to them. And if they have someone underneath them, they have an ability to speak truth to another person as well.
I see.
And so there's always this mentorship concept and this concept of being able to speak truth so that we are not thrown by the waves of doctrine. And that concept is very important. When we speak truth in love, we are able to grow up into all the aspects of the Lord. And that is really powerful, because when we do that, we are not thrown by what I would call the world. And so I'll give an example of that. Back in the day, there was Nickelodeon culture.
Right.
Okay, so people probably remember there was the slime, there was all of the antics that went on. At one point with Nickelodeon culture, they were trying to reach a line of getting 150 youth into their ministry. And that's actually a big thing, right? You want your church to grow.
Sure.
Okay? But how do we do that? That it becomes an issue. And so we have Nickelodeon antics coming in, and what ends up transpiring is they're trying to bring in over 150 youth, and they held up the concept of if I don't reach this goal of getting 150 youth in, I will swallow a goldfish.
Oh, right.
And I'll get pied. And without realizing it, and this was in 1974, we established this culture where it was a shame-based culture. And that is part of what's in our schools today.
I see.
And in our churches today.
Right. Wow. So we'll be coming back in a minute here with Pastor Gerrod Groubert. My name is Pastor Jim Pierce, SpringsLivingWaterChurch.co, sitting in for Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. Stay tuned. Exciting stuff.
Doing awesome.
Okay.
Sorry for not giving you a bit more
We're cool.
signals, but you're really good at what you see mine doing it.
Yep.
And was that helping you? Was that stopwatch helping you?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Good. Another thing I encourage both of you to do is remember this is radio, so they can't see you.
Right.
They can't see your facial expression.
So you got to
so
be
you want to be excited.
right.
You want to have that in your voice.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that recommendation.
Okay.
So it is more engaging.
Right.
Also speak. You want to speak a little faster, probably.
Okay.
More
radio voice.
Not so fast that people can't hear you.
Right.
More engaging.
Okay.
Not like the Micro Machines guy. Zach's too young. He wasn't even born yet.
I don't even know what that is.
Micro Machines. Yeah, it was a guy that talked super fast. It was awesome. Oh, thank you.
Okay, a couple minutes, and then that's the 12-minute section. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You guys prepare for this next segment, the interview. You discuss any questions.
Okay.
Have you guys discussed any questions about them?
No.
Okay. So what are you gonna ask me?
So I'm just going to ask him, where does he get his hair cut? Who's your barber?
Okay, you got like 30 seconds.
Yeah,
I'll try to do
we're out. We'll make up some good stuff.
Okay.
So we can continue with some of your.
So some of the questions that you can ask me
Mhm.
are, I'll shoot. You have a pencil with you? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So uh, jumping into this next segment, one of the questions is going to be, um, how does speaking with truth change your concept or view of children's ministry?
Okay. Uh-oh.
And
We'll just spitball it. No. I remember this song when it came out on the radio many years ago.
same here.
Hey, this is Pastor Jim Pierce with Springs of Living Water Church.co, and I'm interviewing Pastor Gerrod Groubert, and we are discussing raising children in today's world. And so we're going to just kind of move through this material. Gerrod brings some incredible insight and background. Some of your education has been astounding in your experience in raising your own children, homeschooling them. You've done children's ministries. So in your background, you did children's ministries for a couple different churches in Colorado Springs, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
So we were in the non-denominational churches for the most part.
Right.
And in the midst of that experience, we got to work with churches that were more charismatic, that were not as charismatic. And I also worked in the field of the nonprofit. So I was a case manager and a life coach as well for troubled youth.
I see.
And so you have to weigh and be careful how you communicate when you're not communicating to church kids.
Right. In a spiritual environment, as you're in more of a secular environment in that setting.
Yeah, and I also had a background in the hospital, so being able to go and talk to people who are hurting and broken in the hospital themselves, that is an additional piece. And so a lot of that background helped cultivate my wife and I quite a bit, especially when it came to ministry.
I see.
And what we realized real fast was the approach that was going on from a lot of the churches wasn't working. We were statistically not seeing the results that we wanted to see.
Right.
And so when you're pouring into an Easter service, for example, and you're pouring hundreds and hundreds of dollars into that,
right.
and then you have one hand for salvation, that's a hard place to be.
Sure.
And so how can we establish a better culture that reaches people holistically and for a longer period of time?
Right. And so as you encounter truth, how does that change your view on how you do children's ministries, or what your passion for all that was?
So what I would say is this. We decided that we were not going to go with an approach that was entertainment based. Now, with that being said, I'm not sure if you caught exactly how I said it. Entertainment. There's a difference there.
I see.
Entertainment, you're just sitting on the couch doing nothing.
Right.
But believe it or not, they're actually they're taming you. And so there's this pew warmer approach where you sit all the kids down. They're just there. They're not partaking in the different things in the church service itself.
Right.
And pretty soon, before you know it, they're there, and they may not even be learning anything.
Right.
And so we changed that approach into a concept where we replaced it with discernment and discipline and discipleship. So those three pieces it's very interesting. You watch a movie with your kid. Yeah, okay, we all do. No problem.
Sure.
Do you sit down afterwards and have a conversation about what you saw, the concepts behind that movie, being able to unpack that? A 1-minute conversation after a movie is more than a good portion of society gets.
Right.
And so that's an example of how that can change.
And so you, just to clarify, you said instead of entertainment, you use the phrase entertainment.
Yep. Yeah, and that concept of taming actually comes from this concept of being someone who. Well, let me share the scripture. So in Hebrews 12:1,
Mm-hmm.
it says this: all discipline seems sorrowful, yet those who are trained by it, it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. Now, when I mentioned going and sitting down and talking about the movie,
Right.
what did that do? Did it seem sorrowful? It's like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do that necessarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's the sorrowful piece. But in the end, it actually produces a fruit that is good.
Right.
And so there's this concept that we're able to use in youth ministry and in ministry holistically, where we are strengthening the hands of the weak. We're
Right.
strengthening the minds and the spirits of those who are not strong. And we're making paths that we're able to walk on that are righteous.
Mm-hmm.
And that concept of making paths that are righteous is very, very different than people think, because people don't necessarily always think about what that entertainment is doing to their child's mind,
Right.
to
Right.
the adult mind.
Mm-hmm.
We're being brainwashed in a lot of ways, and it can leave us. One of my wife's favorite scriptures that she likes to use is 1 Timothy 4. Reject myths fit for the godless and the gullible. Train yourself for godliness.
Wow. Brilliant.
So if we're taking in all of these myths, all of these movies and this entertainment, and we do not have a balance
Mm-hmm.
for that, we
Mhm.
don't have an ability to be able to train ourselves for that godliness in the way that we ought to.
Right. Right. And so, because entertainment, I love the way you put that, that lulls us into just accepting cultural mores, cultural
It
standards.
does.
Oh, yes, there's a character that goes against my religious or spiritual or moral beliefs
Yes.
on how men and women should engage one another, or et cetera. And we just go, oh, well, it was just a movie. It was just a TV show. But then your goal is to discuss that with your children, particularly at home.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure when you're doing children's ministries, is to kind of raise the bar
Yes.
and say, what does this mean? How does that compare with Scripture?
Well, and the interesting piece of this is we're trying to change the mindset of youth, right? And
Right.
so with the mindset of youth, one of the things that we say to our kids often is this concept of the tree of the life versus the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're told by the world, there's good, there's evil.
Right.
But that's not what God says.
Mm-hmm.
He says there's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil versus the tree of good and evil. We're to eat from the tree of life.
Right.
We still understand the concepts of good and evil,
Mm-hmm.
but we should not live from that. And so the interesting piece of that, and I'll give you an example.
Okay.
So let's just say
This is
that
fascinating.
we
by
have
the way.
Superman.
Yeah. Right.
Right?
Okay.
Because my kids like superheroes. They just like anybody.
Sure.
Okay, so we have Superman. Superman is a person who goes and saves people.
Mm-hmm.
Superman is strong. He's smart. He knows how to get into culture. He knows how to rescue people. He has superhuman strength.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that Superman was actually Dr. Occult when it started out?
What?
Superman originally started as Dr. Occult, and he was not able, they weren't able to sell the merchandise.
Right. Right.
And so Dr. Occult was rebranded into Superman. Now, ironically, one of the things that we see in our culture today is that we have this Marvel series that's coming out.
Right.
And they're superhero oriented too.
Right. Right.
I don't know if people are aware of this, but they just started coming out with the initials underneath the Marvel being GODS.
What?
And if you observe the superheroes, they're all turning into other gods.
What?
Thor,
Wow.
Poseidon,
Right.
all of these legitimate gods are now being rebranded as superheroes to our children. And so if we're not careful theologically,
Right.
they are changing our kids into believing, and this is one of the hard parts, right? Into believing that there are evil people that are able to produce really good fruit. And it's a lie.
Right.
It's a lie. And so how then, as ministers, as parents, as pastors, do we establish a different culture? Well, we have to change that entertainment into something different.
Right.
If the darkness is dark, we have to become those who are brighter,
Right.
who are lighter,
Brilliant.
and we have to be able to present a different concept.
Right, right. Which is challenging. Then you're swimming across culture. You're going upstream instead of downstream.
Yes, absolutely.
And therein lies the challenge. As a children's ministries pastor years ago, I struggled with that as well. I struggle with doing Halloween and Easter and how do we, because those aren't biblical concepts.
Right.
And I would wrestle with it every year, and it drove me crazy. And now I personally choose not to observe those holidays because they're not. Now Easter technically is Resurrection Sunday, and I just call it Resurrection Sunday. So, but anyway, but yeah, that's brilliant. And I had no idea that Superman was originally based on an occultic-oriented character.
Yep. And if you look up most of them, most of the superheroes through Marvel are predominantly leaning towards a God concept,
Right.
more so than they used
Really
in the
more
past.
of a Greco-Roman gods of the ancient pagan world.
Yeah, and they always have. But the interesting thing is they're coming out stronger with
Right.
that.
Wow.
And so there is that concept that and we have to understand that concept of fruit is really important, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So what does the fruit look like if we're training our youth up to discern that that's going on?
Mm-hmm. Right. And how do we shift that culture? How do we not allow the world to influence our children and bring them into the light of who Jesus really is, what the Bible actually teaches? And yeah, beautiful.
And I'll say this, that this is interesting. There's something to be said about Easter, for example.
Mm-hmm.
When a kid goes to pick up an Easter egg
Mm-hmm.
and then they're standing back up, that's actually representing them bowing down to Ishtar.
Wow.
And so they're sowing seeds
Right. Right.
without knowing it.
Wow.
Very interesting if you think about fruit.
Mm.
What do we see? So that's an interesting paradigm, right?
Right.
What fruit is that?
And we have to shift the cultural view. We have to not accept the trends of this world and put people in touch with the Most High and understanding God's Word and His instructions. That's beautiful. My name is Pastor Jim Pierce, Springs Living Water Church. I'm guest hosting for Chaim Goldman, the Watchman, with my good friend Pastor Gerrod Groubert. Stay tuned. We got some great stuff coming. All right, so I don't need to push that button now, but good. I like that. We kind of wove it right in at the very end and help people, because the hard part is questioning their long-held religious and cultural beliefs,
Right.
and saying, "Oh, wait a minute, what am I doing?" I wished I had you 20 years ago, 30 years ago, saying, "Jim, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?"
Right.
Because it would bother me, and if I took it to my senior pastor at the time, "Oh, don't worry about it. Oh, just do a trunk or treat.
Yeah.
Oh, just we'll celebrate Halloween, but we just no scary costumes."
Right.
And it bothered me, raising my own kids. And then through the course of events, unfortunately, my wife had bought the kids Harry Potter series books.
Right.
They devoured them.
Absolutely.
And it's tragic. It bothered me, but it was also, I was working and running around trying to pay bills, and I felt they were slipping through my fingers, and they did. They're none of them are walking with the Lord now, and one of them's into some questionable occultic practices.
And that's where that goes. It's interesting because the Bible actually talks about us not partaking in the myths and fables.
Mm-hmm.
And that piece of that, the myth, I know I mentioned the myths, but how much of our society is based off of myths?
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And how do we straighten those things out and come back to a biblical worldview? Because I think as the gray area is less and less gray now, and more black versus white. And maybe it always was, and I'm just starting to see it more clearly.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, but it is getting darker. I really do think it is. Okay, so we have to come back through here. The last portion is
7 minutes, 30 seconds.
All right. Great job. Next segments, we've got, it's like what, 6.5? 7 and a half. We've got 2.5 minute rant, which is right on the dot, 2.5 minutes. You're going to want to be out and he's the one with the bumper, so you're going to be out within, I guess, what, 4:45, I guess.
Okay.
So
So
leave 2 minutes and 45 seconds
for the end of the show.
for the end of the show.
Okay. And that's where we're going to. So when does the rant happen? As soon as we come back?
No, you're not gonna hear music. You're gonna say, "Hey, Jim Miller, the rant. I'm gonna start the rant. He's gonna go, and then the music is gonna end."
Okay. So you're going to
You
cue
don't
me.
have to. Don't say we're gonna be back with the peak. Just say, "Yeah." And now you say this. Just take on. He's talking about how he doesn't want to let people down.
Okay.
So you can write that out if you want. He doesn't want to let people down, and then you're gonna want to be out. I guess. Let's see. Yeah, I think by 4:45.
Okay. So there's no bumper music.
Right.
You just cue me. I say, and now the peak rants with just a guy.
Right.
Jim Miller takes on.
It starts. So put that back on.
Okay. And now the peak rants with just a guy, Jim Miller, and his take on, I don't want to let people down. Come on, Jim, baby. Bring it. No? All right. Maybe we're waiting for Jim to get queued up. All right. All right. Excellent. So we're coming to sort of a conclusion. We see the problem. The culture is being influenced. It's becoming more polarized. We were discussing that in the break. Privately, we're just saying, it seemed like when my kids were the ages of your kids, there's a lot of gray area. But the truth is, was there really a lot of gray area? Maybe it was just my perception.
Well, and that's exactly the point is there are a lot of people who know what they're doing and they're sneaky.
Yes.
And they like to be able to hide things and they mask them well. And so what we have to ask ourselves is, how do we choose to speak with integrity and righteousness?
Yes.
And speak that truth into the hearts of people, because the part of the Holy Spirit's job also is to speak into our hearts. We're supposed to have the word written on our hearts. And so how do we get that word of God into our youth?
Right.
Are we having them memorize scripture? Are they reading the word on a weekly basis? Are they getting into their Bibles and actually devouring that and opening it up so that people can come in and have it? The kids can actually have a different mindset to operate off of.
Right.
So the 1 Corinthians 12:10 says, discerning of spirits is actually one of the gifts of the Spirit, like miracles, prophecy.
Right.
Those are gifts of the Spirit. But think about that. Discerning of spirits is actually one of the gifts.
Wow.
That is awesome. So if we train up our youth, if we actually take the time to sit down and train them, hey, you heard that? Here's the other side. Hey, what you just saw that in that movie. What did you see? Hey, here's this historical document. Did you know that this also happened? And we take that time, because the world tells us we don't have that time. The world tells us you're too busy, you're a parent, you're doing stuff. So with that being said, we have to choose to make that a standard in our lives. We have to slow down and we have to not lie to them. If it's Easter or Christmas or something like that, we have to be those who come in, and we have to be those who tell the truth. We have to set that standard up. And by doing that, by telling them the truth, we set them up for strength. We set them up for success in the future. We set them up for being able to establish a form of self-control that actually enables them to be strong holistically in the future.
Right, right. And then to be able to capture their hearts is super. You can give people a pile of information and not persuade their heart.
Absolutely.
And then yet to interact with the heart and provide them godly information, godly understanding, being critical of the culture around us is very powerful. Influence is constantly bombarding us. When my kids were young, they would let the TV commercials play when we had, back in the day we didn't have YouTube. And I'd say mute the commercials. And they're like, why, Dad? Why? Yes. Because it's literally intending to subliminally program you.
Yep.
And we have to be careful about what we put in our heads and in our hearts. And that's challenging.
And there's always the pendulum, right? So there's always extremes. So we're supposed to have the fruit of the Spirit. So if we're operating out of this fruit of the Spirit, we have the love, the joy, the peace, the patience, all of the fruit of the Spirit. Well, the opposite of that is also true. we have to not be lovers of self,
Right.
not be lovers of money, not be boastful, not be
Right,
arrogant.
right.
And so there's a lot to be said about that.
I got you. I got you. That's powerful. And if you'd like to get a hold of Pastor Gerrod and discuss some of this information, some of the things he's learned, what's a good place they can reach you at? Do you have an email? Do you want to come to the church website? Or
Yeah, you can just go through to Gerrod.Groubert, Gerrod.Groubert at gmail.com.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So now we're ending our segment and we're going to go to the Jim rant. And here is Rants with Jim Miller. Bring it, Jim, baby.
Okay, so now you're gonna have. So this is gonna end. You're gonna have like a couple minutes of a break, and then you're gonna have your ending segment. So go to that last page.
Okay.
Segment 6, close. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So you've got it's total that, and music comes. You have a whole minute bumper.
Okay.
You're going to want to. I did not give you this.
Okay.
I should have. I'll try to text that to you if possible.
Sure.
Did you ever say, "Hey, thanks for being on the peak"? Did you ever tell them thanks for being on the peak?
No, we haven't done the
Okay,
final
so you're
greeting.
gonna need to do that too here. So you're gonna need to. You're gonna hurry through because it's pretty quick. So you're gonna
Okay.
say, "Hey, thanks for being on the peak. Thanks for having me. Hey, tomorrow we're gonna have this.
Oh, I see.
Thank you to Salem Media. We air Monday to Thursday. Be back tomorrow with a new guest host.
We don't know who he is yet or she.
Well, so it's gonna be Jordan Baldwin on Thursday. I need it. Here, I'll come back in a sec. I've seen to bump him out with the music. Okay, so we have a 3-minute break.
Okay. 3 minutes.
Live streaming still going. Okay, good. So, another thing, you remember that text I sent you with these promos, these on-air promos? Do you end up reading any of these?
No.
If you're able to read both of those too in the amount of time,
Okay.
you're gonna be tight.
I can
You have
talk
to speak
fast,
fast, talk
Zach,
fast.
on air
Um,
promos.
You're gonna want to read both of these
Okay.
church order guides.
Oh.
You're gonna want to read both the church order guides and this promo and this promo.
Do both those quick. How much time do I have? A minute? 2 minutes?
Well, it has to fit in this total of
2:20.
220,
Okay.
but that's including you outing. That's including you saying thanks for being the peak. That's including you talking about Thursday's show.
Who's Thursday? Jordan what?
So Jordan Baldwin.
Not related to the Baldwin family. Sorry.
Baldwin of First Amendment Media. He and his well, I wish I could send you something about the guests. I don't know if I'll really have time.
First Amendment Media. He's going to be talking about.
He's going to be talking about work, investigative journalism work here in the Springs.
Okay. So I got to go quick. So I do the close first and then the.
Oh, this is all part of the close. So, right, you're going to want to say this. That's sometime in here, yeah. Start read one of those. You're going to want to then also read that. Wear Monday Thursday. Be back tomorrow with new guest host on Thursday. Our guest host is going to be Jordan Baldwin. Their guest, just ignore their guest.
Just investigative journalism. Right.
Journalism. That's what we're talking about. And then you want to say this. Stay tuned with the Jerry Elder Show coming up next. And then people say the quiet stuff alone.
I am Zach Goldman's puppet. I mean,
Pastor Jim Pierce. And then Shalom. My dad says Shalom. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, I say Shalom, me, my homie.
And if there's time, I'll cue a shofar sound too.
Tambien.
But you have a whole minute. You have a minute bumper. It's the one-day song.
Do I start before the song? Do I just keep talking through the song?
Yeah, you keep because
Okay.
The song runs for an entire minute.
Oh,
So you're
okay.
gonna have a while.
Okay.
Also, the bumper that's coming in, I'm gonna point to you extra soon when this bumper starts. I'm gonna point to you just after a couple seconds. You can just go right into it.
So I go right into the close. Thank you for joining us. The Peak News. We hope you're enjoying our hyper-local news talk.
I want to make sure to thank Jared for coming.
Thank you, Pastor Gerrod Groubert, for all the amazing things you're doing.
Having me real quick.
Right.
And besides that, and then it'll be a wrap in a few minutes.
So cool. So cool.
Yeah, it's a really good show though. I really enjoyed it.
You make it look easy, Zach.
You're the one doing the talent.
Ooh. Hey, thank you for joining us on Peak News. Pastor Gerrod, thank you for coming today. I appreciate it.
welcome.
It's wonderful. You have such fantastic insights and adjustments in how children's ministries and raising a family in today's world is fantastic. We hope you're enjoying our hyper-local news talk and considering joining us as part of the volunteer news team as a citizen journalist, tech, or intern, or as Peak Partners sponsor. Thank you to the Watchman, Chaim Goldman, for inviting me to host today's show while he takes some much-needed time off. Hopefully he's getting rested up. And thank you, Salem Media, and all the Peak News sponsors. We air Monday through Thursday, so we'll be back tomorrow, but with a new guest host, was going to be Jordan Baldwin, not related to the Baldwin brothers, First Amendment Media, investigative journalism. It's going to be an interesting show, fascinating stuff. Let's see, our guest host today, my name is Pastor Jim Pierce, Springs of Living Water Church here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I'd like to remind you, church voter guides, the Colorado Springs City Council election has happened now through April 1st. Get informed and vote your values by using church voter guides at www.churchvoterguides.org. They surveyed all the city council candidates on topics you care about and published their exact answers in the nonpartisan 501c3 Complicit Guide. Get their downloadable and printable or mobile-friendly voter guide. It's awesome. I've used it in the past. I'll use it forever at www.churchvoterguide.org. And now, and make sure to vote by 7 p.m. on April 1. Passover at the Pinery with Chaim Goldman. The Peak Events presents Passover at the Pinery, Thursday, April 17th, co-hosted by Messianic Jew Chaim Goldman, the Watchman, host of the Peak News and director of Repairing the Breach Ministries, and Mitchell Yellen. Oh, I love Mitchell Yellen, owner of the Pinery. Join them for a diverse program. It includes traditional, non-traditional Jewish Passover Seder, teachings on the prophetic film fulfillment of Passover, music and song, and revelry, a delicious Passover meal, including lamb. Oh, it's delicious. Thank you so much. Peak News /events. Shalomi, my homie.